Welcome to this year's Korcula School. This will be in the spirit of Franz Timmermans' message. We must show solidarity with the most affected regions in Europe to make sure the Green Deal gets everyone's full support and has a chance to become a reality. Let our Korcula School be another successful reflection and exchange of ideas. Dobrodošle i dobrodošli na ovogodišnju Korčulansku školu, koja će biti u duhu poruke Franza Timmermansa. Moramo pokazati solidarnost s najugroženijim regijama u Europi kako bismo bili sigurni da će zeleni dogovor dobiti punu podršku svih i tako dobiti priliku da postane stvarnost. Neka na našoj 10. Korčulanskoj školi ovo bude još jedno uspješno promišljanje i razmjena ideja.
So, dear friends and comrades, welcome to this panel session where we want to discuss about the EU Green New Deal. It is a project of utmost importance and it's high time to implement it. And as we just heard from Andrea, this is also true from a gender perspective because exactly the climate crisis hits women much harder than men. And I want to add that this is not only the case, of course, in sub-Saharan Africa or maybe in Bangladesh, but here in Europe as well. And we have seen in the last weeks, basically, that if there are no thunderstorms, this region is on fire. So it's really high time to switch our economies to full decarbonization. And it's good that we have the EU Green New Deal for sure. But there's also a lot of criticism that the Green New Deal is a missed opportunity for deeper structural change in the European Union. And overall, the Green New Deal really seems to focus on replacing existing structures by greener ones, but not at aiming for deep transformation of our societies or economies. And one part of this criticism is also that the Green New Deal is basically gender blind. Or even worse, that its implementation might lead to even more inequality. So one of the questions we want to deal with in this panel is really to ask whether the panelists here and online share this view, and if they do so, what they think would be a good step to link the climate policies of the EU and gender policies of the EU. So I hope, very much hope, that we have Maria Joao Rodriguez with us. And there she is. Wonderful. So I think I have to go in front so she can see me. Perfect. Thanks a lot. So a warm welcome from Korcula Island. It's really a pleasure of having you with us. I think most of you will be aware, Maria Joao Rodriguez, after having been a minister in the cabinet of Antonio Guterres, had a lot of key positions in major EU institutions and is now the president of FEPS, which is the best European political foundation. So Maria will have to leave early today because she needs to attend the Congress of the Socialist Party in Portugal. And this is why I would suggest that we start right away with her introductory speech, and then later on it will be my pleasure to introduce the other panelists to you. So without further ado, Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and my warm greetings from the other side of Europe. I'm right now in Lisbon, but I'm so pleased to join you, and I'd love to be with you physically, but I'm with you fully in spirit, I can tell you. I think this Korcula School program this year, this is really a great program. These are the right words to recover, but also to retool for the future. And yes, I really believe that we are going to a crucial period because we are supposed to be able to cope with this climate tragedy unfolding, to prevent the worst, which is already behind and in front of our eyes. But we also want to take ownership of the current second transition, which is the digital transition, and all these tackling old and new social inequalities. Yes, because the risk is there. But look, there is something I like to tell you is that I think that due to this very dramatic experience of the pandemics, of the COVID, we learn something together, which is the value of solidarity. And I believe this unique collective experience has also highlighted the value of what we can call a feminist society, a society where we really want to take care of everybody and keep everybody together. So I think that we should build on this new experience to prepare the next period. And we know that European Union has reached a quite high level point of solidarity by agreeing for the first time on a much bigger budget, European budget, to support member states. And right now, all member states are preparing their recovery plans. So let's use this unique opportunity to shape these recovery plans in all countries in such a way that we can really cope with climate change, implement the Green Deal, take ownership of the digital transformation, and putting the social pillar in motion. I can tell you that FAPS, as the European Progressive Foundation, is willing to work with all of you to support this new phase. And let me just identify some key questions. On the Green Deal, we need to ask, how can we make the best of this Green Deal to improve our housing conditions, to improve our transport choices, and to turn all these in new opportunities for jobs and quality jobs. And when it comes to digital transformation, which is also changing a lot in our lives, we need to make sure that our working rights are respected. If we are in telework, in platform work, if we are in vital jobs in the front line, we need to have our working conditions and access to social protection fully respected. But I would like to conclude my message with a central idea, which is the following. Something building on my own personal experience as a Minister of Social Affairs in Portugal, as the rapporteur of the European Social Pillar. And my message is building on also my experience in a country where we are governed by socialists. Let me tell you something I think is really important. This is about the European policies. The policies of the European Union, they want to support democracy as the government from all of us to all of us, and to respect rule of law everywhere. This is a very strong message I'd like to underline. And the second one is about the social pillar. Because I can tell you, when I was the rapporteur, we had a choice. Either launching the social pillar just for the Eurozone or launching it for all citizens of the European Union. And we went to the second way, which is the right way. So I wanted to know that the social pillar and the action plan adopted in Oporto Summit a few months ago are really to be implemented to tackle social inequalities. So I count on progressive forces everywhere, and particularly on women, because I know that women are particularly prepared to understand this and to push for this, to make sure that these European policies will be implemented everywhere. So let's use the opportunity And many thanks again for the Korcula School. Great program. I'm with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria, for being with us, at least virtually today. And thank you so much for showing us the big picture of where we stand in Europe with so many challenges. But I must say, it's really unfortunate that you cannot be here with so many passionate people around who want to tackle these challenges and to change Europe and the neighboring countries for the better. So all the best for the Congress, and we are very much hoping to see you maybe here next year. Okay, thanks so much. So now I will have a look to see whether the other panelists are already with us. So we will hear 5 panelists. Kata Tüte has already been presented in the previous panel, so I don't have to introduce her to you again. I just want to wish you the best of luck for, as a previous speaker put it, send Orban to hell. Then I very much welcome Natasha Vučković, who is the Executive Director of the Center for Democracy Foundation, and she has been an MP in the Serbian Parliament from 2007 to 2020. Welcome. After Natasha's input, I will first of all give the floor to you, the audience, for some questions. And after that, we will have the chance to listen to 3 more distinguished panelists. Marta Bonifert, glad that you are here. She lived and studied in half a dozen countries around the world and is working on environmental issues since more than 35 years. She is now the Vice President of the European Partners for the Environment and, of course, also a board member of CEE Gender Network. Irina Lazzarini has also lived and worked in many countries around the world. And I don't know whether by any chance, is she already with us? Yeah, you had the opportunity of meeting Marta in China. Maybe you can find out later. Irina is a sustainable energy expert at the Energy Community Secretariat in Austria, and she has worked in both UN and EU institutions before, as well as with the World Economic Forum. And last but not least, we will welcome Raymond von Erman, who is the Executive Director of the European Partners for the Environment, and in his written input for this conference, opened some great ideas on also how to link the topics of digitalization and participation and the Green New Deal. So thanks very much.
Sorry,
yeah.
Zephi is online. Zephi Dimata.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
She is also,
yes.
Okay. Sorry, that was a last minute, I'm very sorry, that was a last minute change that I was not aware of. So Zephi is also here, lecturer of Pantanion University. It's great that you are also with us.
I'm already here. I'm just waiting for hearing, okay, my contribution.
Okay, then I'm glad to hear that I'm surrounded online and offline by even more great people just 4 weeks after becoming the new director of the FES office in charge of Croatia and Slovenia. And having said that, I would like to pass the floor to the first panelist joining online, to Kata Tüte. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm also really sorry that I couldn't go. I was really planning to have a last days off, but already as Zita Gurmai was talking about that in Hungary, we have a quite hot political situation, primaries going on, elections going on. So I couldn't leave my country. I was asked not to travel because of the COVID situation, not to get in a quarantine for the next weeks. So I have many hats. I think I was introduced as Deputy Mayor of Budapest. I'm working beside Mr. Gergely Karácsony, who is now one of the most promising candidates to be the new Prime Minister of Hungary. Hopefully this is what we will be working for, but this is not the hat why I'm here today. I'm also a member of the European Committee of the Regions. This is a European body which consists of locally elected politicians, mayors, local representatives, representatives of regions, politicians who are actually working at home in their own cities, talking to their citizens day to day, knowing their day-to-day problems. And the reason for this body is that what we do is that we consult European legislation, what the European Commission is planning to do, the European Parliament, and we try to add the voice of our citizens, the voice of our cities. So we try to put in some reality to European legislation, and it's not just about critics, it's about how to implement, because what we always say is that in the end, it's the cities and regions and towns who actually implement these regulations and who actually have to explain their citizens why we're doing this. In the European Committee of the Regions, I was writing quite a few opinions. Now I'm working on a new opinion of gender equality and European Green Deal. A lot has been said. Why is it important that the EU, the member states, has committed themselves to gender equality in a lot of words? We have a gender equality strategy. But what we see is that when it comes to reality, when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to spending money, gender equality is evaporating somewhere. So what we say is that we have these streams. We want to change our societies, the way we use transport. We are changing our cities, but we are not looking at how will this transform our society, how this transform will affect men and how it will affect women in our societies. And what we see is that these two streams have to unite. So gender equality and these transformations. And this is when we talk about gender mainstreaming everywhere. And especially in spending money, especially when it comes to recovery and resiliency. What we see is we see the existing inequalities. We see a lot, but due to the lack of gender impact assessments, we don't know that these new programs, these new transitions, the European Green Deal, the Recovery and Resiliency Facility, the Next Generation EU, will it close the gaps between men and women, or will it widen the gaps between men and women? And what is our role as cities and regions? What we say is that if we want to have a more equal society, gender equality is not something you have to deal on the European level. It's not something you have to deal on the national level. It's something you have to deal on all levels. You have to deal with it, you have to work on it, you have to look at it on a city level, a regional level, national level, and European level at the same time. Otherwise, it will be a very, very low effective transition, or maybe it won't even work at all. What we lack is, and what we are talking about a lot, that is data we don't have. So to measure something, to know how the outcomes will be, we need to collect data. So we try to convince as many mayors, like one of my biggest goal is to convince as many mayors, as many local representatives to start gender budgeting, to start collecting sex disaggregated data, to start step by step looking at their budgets, looking at their decisions, that how will it affect men and women, by collecting a lot and sharing a lot of good practices from cities all around Europe who are actually doing this. We were talking about a lot what we saw in crisis, like in the COVID crisis, how women were hit worse. So I think all of our concerns are well grounded. And now if we look at the energy prices rocketing, of course, yeah, we have a lot of ambitious targets on reducing CO2 emissions, but what we see now is energy prices rocketing, and it's affecting energy poverty. And we also know that poverty has a women's face. So it's affecting a lot of women, a lot of single mothers, a lot of pensionists, most of them being women. And we know about the pension gap. I know it, if we were referred to it. So what we see now in the Recovery and Resiliency Facility is the European Commission has soft gender impact assessment criteria. So they suggest the member state that you should look at it. But what I see is, and what we are suggesting is that gender impact assessment shouldn't be a soft criteria. It should be as firm criteria as on corruption or on any other issues. And when we talk about green jobs, this is one of what we always talk about, green jobs. And we don't really look at it where the green jobs will be created. And we know, we see these recovery and resiliency programs, most of the money goes to male-dominated sectors, energy, digitalization, construction. And when we look at sectors which are women-dominated, well, we don't see much money and recovery and resiliency facility. So I'll stop now. This is what I'm working on, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you very much for the floor.
Thank you so much, Kata. I really liked how you made this link, pointing out that really the transition won't work if we look at, if we forget to look at gender equality. And this is not an add-on to the transition, but if we take it into account, I think it will even make the transition faster, more smooth. Also, if we look at women leadership really in climate policies. And I particularly liked also you highlighting the focus on male-dominated sector, replacing the assembly of combustion engine cars by EVs, and not looking at the almost zero carbon footprint of education, of healthcare, which are traditionally female-dominated sectors and jobs. Thank you very much for that. I will now pass on the floor to Natasha, please. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I would like first to thank Dasha and all the C Gender Network team for the invitation to participate at this year's conference here in Korcula. I had the pleasure to participate on Zoom last year, and it is a great pleasure to see you all in vivo this time. And it is a great pleasure also to see all the friends from FEPS, FES, all of Palme Solidar, and all the parties and movements and NGOs from the region with which I participate for so many years. And now, I understood that there is a translation and that we should actually also use the opportunity to speak in our mother languages. So I will switch to my language, or the, and I would like to stress the, sorry. Ovdje smo govorili više puta o vremenu i rekli smo koliko je vreme ključno pitanje. Meni se i također rekli smo, i dopala mi se poruka Gorana Radosavljevića, evropska integracija, evropska integracija, evropska integracija Balkana je nešto što je ključno pitanje. I postavlja se pitanje da li i mi ovdje na Zapadnom Balkanu, ali i Evropska unija dobro razume zaista pitanje vremena kada govorimo o prilagođavanju, o primjeni Green Deala na Zapadnom Balkanu. Kad pogledamo s jedne strane aktuelni status u pristupnim pregovorima, u procesu pridruživanja. Vidjet ćemo da smo zapravo u ogromnom zaostatku poslednjih 2-3 godine. Neću da spominjem pitanje otvaranja pregovora. Mi smo svi, čini mi se ovde, prisutni zahtevali i tražili da se otvore pregovori sa Makedonijom i Albanijom zbog toga, Severnom Makedonijom i Albanijom, zbog pozitivne i važne poruke koju to ima za ceo Zapadni Balkan. Imali smo i nekoliko takođe negativnih poruka iz Evropske unije u poslednjih godinu dana, počeši naravno sa krizom oko COVID-a, sećate se naravno i zabrane izvoza opreme za Zapadni Balkan, medicinske opreme. To je ostavilo lošu poruku. Kao i nešto što se nedavno dogodilo, a to je odsustvo Zapadnog Balkana iz konferencije o budućnosti Evrope, što je takođe jedna poruka da i građani Zapadnog Balkana to doživljavaju kao da zapravo i dalje nismo viđeni kao stvarni partneri i kao buduće članice Evropske unije. S druge strane, Evropska unija je naravno imala i dosta pozitivnih koraka i u nastavku COVID-a, izrazila je vrlo veliku solidarnost u kasnijem delu krize. Započet je ekonomski investicioni plan koji naravno u znatnoj meri uključuje i programe vezane za Green Deal. Ono što se pokazuje kao ključno ovde je pitanje na koji način ćemo mi iskoristiti kapacitete za regionalnu saradnju i tu povezujem naravno sa nekim okvirima koji već postoje institucionalnim, nešto što je pokrenuto u okviru berlinskog procesa, naravno stvaranje zajedničkog ekonomskog zajedničkog tržišta regiona, u okviru čega naravno možemo govoriti i o raznim politikama Green Deala, regionalnog tržišta i tako dalje. Mislim da je jako važno da razumemo da u našim zemljama postoji jedna dilema koja je vrlo često stvarana od vlada i donosilaca odluka, a to je razvoj ili životna sredina, razvoj ili klima. I to je jedna dilema koju čini mi se naše grupacije, naše političke partije, naše udruženja moraju jako mnogo da negiraju. Dakle, razvoj je upravo zaštita životne sredine, razvoj je upravo Green Deal, razvoj je upravo zelena ekonomija, novi zeleni poslovi i tako dalje. Zašto se ta dilema postavlja? Pa upravo zbog toga što veliki broj naših vlada zapravo na toj dilemi nalazi opravdanje za angažman, za prihvatanje stranih investicija, drugih aktera, Kine, Turske, Emirata i tako dalje, koji su u suprotnosti sa evropskim standardima zaštite životne sredine, koji su u suprotnosti i sa procedurama, tenderskim procedurama ustanovljenim u Evropskoj uniji i tako dalje. I mislim da je to jedno važno pitanje. A zašto se to dešava? Dešava se zbog toga što naravno nema dovoljno sredstava, zbog toga što postoji veliko siromaštvo, zbog toga što je potrebno investirati u infrastrukturu i to je pitanje koje Evropska unija i Zapadni Balkan moraju zajedno da rešavaju. Ovo su sve pitanja koja nas vode naravno do pitanja osetljivosti Green Deala i uopšte zelene ekonomije, odnosno novih poslova u odnosu na rodna pitanja. Ja bih tu sad otvorila nekoliko, čini mi se, ključnih tema. Mi kad govorimo o glavnim problemima koje Zapadni Balkan ima, a to su i zagađenost vazduha, spominjali smo to već do sada, dekarbonizacija, upravljanje otpadom. Mi danas kad govorimo o upravljanju otpadom u Beogradu imamo utisak da smo decenijama daleko u odnosu na standarde koje treba da dostignemo samo dajem jedan primer, verovatno ste svi pratili jednu ozbiljnu krizu koju smo u tom pogledu imali pre 10 dana. Upravljanje i zaštita prirodnih resursa i tako dalje. Govorimo o tome da ova tranzicija mora da bude pravedna. Sad hoću da ukažem na jednu stvar koja mi se čini vrlo tačna, a to je da socijalna dimenzija evropske integracije zemalja Zapadnog Balkana je potpuno marginalizovana tokom najvećeg dela pregovora, procesa pridruživanja i pristupanja i pristupnih pregovora. Dakle, u prvom planu je uvek market, tržište, ekonomija, a socijalna dimenzija proširenja iz raznih razloga, da ne ulazimo sada u sve njih, je negde na margini. I ako je na margini, onda se postavlja pitanje kako ćemo s druge strane doći i do podrške za just transition, za ono što je socially just u tom, pa na kraju i za podršku naravno pitanju rodne ravnopravnosti u ovom kontekstu. I čini mi se da tu treba naglasiti još nekoliko stvari. Sa stanovišta našeg narativa, govorimo o našim organizacijama, političkim partijama, udruženjima, mislim da treba da budemo svesni jedne velike opasnosti, a to je, Goran Radosavljević je danas pomenuo ovo istraživanje da 60% naših građana nešto zna o klimi i klimatskom, veliko je neznanje. Ali tu postoji jedna velika opasnost da razgovor o klimi, narativ o klimatskim promenama, Green Dealu, bude viđen od strane naših građana kao jedan vrlo elitistički projekat. I mislim da tu moramo da prilagodimo jako mnogo naše narative i da jako mnogo siđemo do zaista građana. Tu je velika takođe disproporcija između onoga što se vidi između urbanog i ruralnog. I tu mislim da treba naglasiti potencijal žena kao aktera promene, razvoja i uticaja upravo na lokalne politike, na politike u ruralnim krajevima, zbog toga što je to u svim našim zemljama, čini mi se, izuzetno važno. Takođe, važno je da razmotrimo sledeće pitanje. Svi govorimo o tome da su nova zanimanja uglavnom tamo gde postoji dominacija muškaraca i to je nesumnjivo tačno. Međutim, ovde imamo još jedan problem koji ima i Evropska unija, ali kod nas je on dramatičan i čini mi se da će tek biti, a to je smanjivanje tržišta rada, odnosno sužavanje tržišta rada upravo zbog odlaska ogromnog broja i to pre svega mladih ljudi koji se očekuju da bi trebali biti nosioci u ovoj tranziciji modernog doba ka novoj ekonomskoj politici i tako dalje. I tu sad imamo, čini mi se, jednu potrebu, a to je da jako mnogo investiramo u ono što je ne samo politički dijalog koji je nužan, socijalni dijalog takođe, ali i ono što je intergeneracijski dijalog. Mislim da se tu postavlja ključno pitanje i između mladih i starijih žena takođe zbog toga što prioriteti, percepcije, perspektive zaista zahtevaju tu potrebu. Mislim da je takođe važno naglasiti potrebu rada sa mladima, upravo zbog još jedne podele koja je vrlo je rastuća, čini mi se, u našim društvima, a to je disproporcija, odnosno veliki jaz između, s jedne strane, visoko obrazovanih mladih ljudi koji su duboko ušli, dakle, u proces digitalizacije, učestvuju u ovoj digitalnoj ekonomiji i tako dalje, i one velike armije mladih ljudi koja je nezaposlena, koja je van sistema obrazovanja i van zaposlenja. U našim društvima to je negde oko 20, čak 20-25%, znamo da je veliki broj, zavisno od zemlje do zemlje i više. Tako da tu je jedan veliki jaz koji moramo negde takođe naći načina da prevaziđemo. U svemu tome je pitanje, naravno, gender equality i na koji način taj gender mainstreaming provući kroz sve te politike i na to sve obratiti pažnju. Evo, to su neka pitanja. Dakle, jeste važno je green, digital i social, ali moramo voditi računa da je social u priličnoj meri u našim reformama i u dijalogu sa Evropskom unijom zapravo negde marginalizovana tema.
Thank you very much, Natasha, for raising a lot of very relevant questions. I noted down many of them. I very much like that you also highlighted the dilemma that is often made up between climate and development. And I think this is a dilemma that is also hurting us as social democrats in particular, because if we always say that there is a dilemma, then we have to choose one side or the other, and then we can only lose. But if we say that there are win-win situations, many, and we place a good vision for also the people, how they can have a better life, if we really have this social ecological transformation, then I hope that more voters will also really believe that we can pull through with this social ecological transformation in the future. So I would like to give the floor to you, to the audience, for a couple of minutes for a round of first questions before I then hand over to our second round of panelists. Who would like to start to ask a question to Kata or Natasha? Yes. Do we have another mic? Otherwise, I can move.
Thank you both for a very informative deliberation. I actually have a question both for Natasha and for Kata. So I will start with Kata because she was the first panelist. You mentioned that you are also a member of the European Committee of Regions. And that one of the key issues now with the increase of energy resources, the prices of energy resources, is the increase in occurrence of energy poverty. However, as EU member states, we have only received sort of recommendations from European Commission, but very little funds, especially for newer members of European Union, to create projects and improvements for citizens. What can Committee of Regions do as sort of an enforcement or suggestions to the European Parliament to perhaps create funds for fighting energy poverty? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Is there another question that we can add right away? 22, 23, 24, none? Okay, so Kata, please.
What we can do actually as the Committee of the Regions is that our members can actually show reality, like when it comes to implementation, when it comes to like very ambitious goals, because it's really easy to know. I know it's not easy, but it's like setting out goals in the parliament of greenhouse gas reduction is sometimes easier than implementing it in reality. So what our role is as cities and regions is that we actually see what is happening, like in the short term, what are the obstacles of implementation. And yes, there is now a phenomenon and an increase in energy prices. It's not an increase, it's a skyrocketing. It's a doubling of energy prices of electricity. We see now, planning our next year's budget, in Hungary, we have a special situation because we have regulated consumer energy prices. So the Hungarian consumers are like not directly affected by this phenomenon. But this is not all over Europe. And what we see is that, of course, if you have the money to renovate your home, then you can decrease your energy prices. But what we see is that those who suffer mostly from energy poverty don't have the resources and don't have the capacity, don't have the information, don't have anything to receive those funds, those resources, to do their refurbishment of their homes. We see that the most poor has the most energy inefficient housing. We have these housing reports. So what we do as cities, regions, and towns, we show a picture of realities, and we also give some recommendations, so like how can you, or okay, how should the European budget work? So how can we help our citizens? And we always say we are the ones who actually know who has problems with housing. We know the families because we are aiding them like in many different ways. So we like can even tell you their phone numbers who actually are in need of support and those who are not. I mean, I'm not giving it, just this is why we always see the cities and regions and should be seen as a really, really important leg of this table. So without us, it's really, really hard to actually reach these ambitious climate goals and energy goals without a lot of suffering. So this is what we do. We try to increase our role and try to give good practice guides on how to actually make this transition a more just transition.
Thank you very much for the answer. Now I see that we have a second question from the audience. And maybe if you could also shortly introduce yourself.
My name is Sonja Kovac. I come from SDP Croatia, and I also come from Osijek, which is in the eastern part of the country. Nataša, evo ja ću onda ovako da se lakše razumijemo. Palo mi je onako, baš mi je zapalo za oko ova vaša teza da imamo veliki jaz između visoko obrazovanih mladih ljudi, ali mladih ljudi koji su nezaposleni i koji su van sustava obrazovanja i da tu moramo naći nekakav način da premostimo taj jaz kada je u pitanju edukacija i informisanje, kada je u pitanju Green Deal. Međutim, kao neko ko radi za gradsku upravu i ko direktno radi sa građanima i kao država članica koja je evo sad skoro još malo pa 10 godina u Europskoj uniji, ono što ja vidim je da je jako teško građanima govoriti o progresivnim temama kao što je Green Deal ako nemaju nekakve osnovne stvari njima dostupne, kao što je, ne znam, kanalizacija, čista voda, pitka voda, čisti zrak. Kako pričati o European Green Dealu i svemu pozitivnom što on donosi ako građani, posebice, pa čak i u velikim gradovima, u prigradskim naseljima i velikim gradovima nemaju te nekakve osnovne komunalne stvari riješene? Hvala.
Jeste, u kontekstu našeg siromaštva se postavlja ovo pitanje kako govoriti o Green Dealu, o novim zelenim poslovima i stvarno, što sam rekla, to velikom broju građana koji su u problemu svakodnevnom. Uzmimo, na primer, problem s kojim su se suočili Romi u nehigijenskim naseljima s početka COVID krize. Romska zajednica je vrlo velika u Srbiji, a i u drugim našim zemljama. Na koji način ćete vi sada pitanje čiste vode, a to jeste pitanje Green Deala, higijene u naseljima i tako dalje, prikazati? Mislim da tu postoji način, samo moramo nekako povezati i teme. Jako je važno, čini mi se, da mi kao progresivne snage, koje danas, nažalost, nemamo u svim našim zemljama odlučujući uticaj i daleko od velikog uticaja, ostvarujemo jednu edukativnu ulogu, jednu komunikacijnu ulogu, upravo na tome da je ovo pitanje razvoja i ne dozvoliti da najvećem broju populista odgovara ova tema development or environment. Ne, to se mora povezati. I na nama je velika uloga, čini mi se, u tome. Kako to učiniti? Mislim pre svega da moramo širiti savezništva i partnerstva. Mislim da je jako važno raditi sa sindikatima, bez obzira koliko su oni ponegde slabi ili nedovoljno uticaj. Mislim da moramo raditi i sa poslodavcima koji postaju climate friendly, da zajedno sa njima gradimo te koalicije. Mislim da jako mnogo moramo raditi sa svim onim decision making, znači donosiocima odluka koji osjećaju da su, znači, ovo teme koje su najvažnije. I da nema vremena. Znači, mislim da je strašno važno u taj naš narativ uključiti nema vremena. Znači, moramo raditi odmah. Eto, to su neke teme. S tim što, naravno, za sve ovo pitanje je stanje demokratije ključno. Ukoliko vi imate nepostojeće demokratske mehanizme, ukoliko nemate demokratske parlamente, ukoliko nemate javni dijalog, ukoliko nemate slobodne medije, ukoliko nemate mogućnost da se suprotstavljate, ukoliko nemate mogućnost da radite watchdog aktivnosti i da građani čuju o onome do čega ste vi došli, u kritici vlasti, u kritici investicija koje sam malo pre pomenula, u Srbiji je jako ozbiljna situacija s tim, mislim u Crnoj Gori takođe. To su ozbiljni problemi. Znači moramo ih negde građanima učiniti zornim i prikazati to kroz njihove, prikazati to kao njihov prioritet.
Thank you very much. There's very little time for fighting climate crisis and very little time for questions. So if you could keep your questions super short, it would be great. We will have a second round of questions afterwards also.
Let's try. Okay, just a short comment and question. There's an easy way to explain why we don't need industrialization, but we need development. The gaming industry today is twice bigger than steel industry. We don't need steel factory, we need some kid producing video games. That's very easy explanation. But my question is, we always speak about the state need to do something, but state cannot solve everything, of course. And one of the way to solve the problem is decentralization. And we stop speaking about decentralization. If maybe the government of Croatia cannot solve the problem in Korčula, but Korčula mayor can. And somehow the funds for social cohesion, regional development is lost, as I know, regarding the Western Balkan, and we need to support that. And how you see that topic today? My question, regional development.
So maybe you wanted to say to whom your question is addressed. To both, whoever wants to answer. So, Natasha, would you like, or Kata, would you like to answer to that question or comment?
Just partly, because also in Hungary, we formed this alliance of cities, not just Hungary, but also with Warsaw and Bratislava, on direct fundings of cities, where what we see is that, like in my country, my government isn't so committed is not really in line with the European goals and values in every field. So what we say is that here are the big cities who actually represent millions of citizens, and we are committed, we are in line with the European values, we are capable. So there's one solution of, okay, Hungary doesn't get a recovery and resiliency facility, but it doesn't help solving the problem. So what we say is that here are the cities, we're active actors and capable. So if there can be a transformation of the funding system where cities can directly get funds, it would work much better than what's happening now, and countries like Hungary not getting European funds. I don't think that is the solution of a problem, but this is not a real answer to the questions, but this is what I can add now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Small addition?
Just 2 sentences. There is another issue here, Goran. Apart from decentralization, it is how the role of the state will actually be transformed, and to which extent the market will have, what will be the role of the market, how this relationship between the state and the market will go on, and then also the decentralization process. Because there are attempts that the state role is growing in this process, but at the same time, it can lead to some unwanted consequences as well. So we have to be, as progressives, we have to be very aware of this. And of course, this decentralization is highly needed in bringing these policies closer to citizens.
Okay, thanks very much for this first round. I see that there are more questions on the floor, but we have another 4 panelists with us. And I mean, the good news is that if we miss the 1.5 degree target, then we are doomed. But today we have more time after the next round of panelists to discuss and to hear your questions. So I ask for a little bit more patience, and I would like to pass the floor now to Marta.
Good morning to everyone. I think it's still morning. Thank you very much for the invitation and for the fascinating discussion. I was just saying in one of the breaks that 10 years ago, you wouldn't address climate change or environment or any related issues or sustainability because it wasn't on the agenda. It wasn't important and people were looking into the future differently. Don't forget, next year is going to be the 50th anniversary of the Stockholm Conference, the environment conference that's set up on June 5th, UNEP, the United Nations Environmental Programme. It took 50 years to get where we are. So if you put my presentation on, I'm going to be extremely quick with it. You can see that mankind have undergone an agricultural revolution, an industrial revolution. We are in the middle of the digital revolution. And they say that we need the sustainability revolution. My question to you, can we afford to have digital revolution and the sustainability revolution separate? Or it has to go hand in hand. Otherwise, as you said, very likely, we are doomed. If you are looking at the mega trends, whether it's overpopulation, abusing of resources, the way of life we live, you can see that we need more than one planet. Whether it was pandemic or not pandemic, we still consume more than we should because we don't have more than one planet. The next one is looking into how we can come out of it. So one of the agendas was related to the World Sustainability Development Goals 2030. It's a clear path. It also focuses, if you look at downstairs, that nothing works in silos. Although the goals are 17 of them, but none of the issues could be addressed without using some of the others. When you look at gender, without education, without partnership, without good governance, it will not exist. The goals cannot be fulfilled. Then we come to the next agenda that I think is quite interesting. It is related to the global risk report of last year. It shows the top 10 risks in the world, likelihood, and the impact. You can see more than half of it related to environment. And you can see that it's extremely important that extreme weather or climate action failure is on the top. But when you look at this year's, what changed? 2 issues changed subsequently. The extreme weather is still at the likelihood very high, but we have 2 things. Number 4 is infectious diseases, and number 10 is livelihood crisis. So we have the impact of infectious diseases and livelihood crisis coming up. And this is indeed in the past 1 year we were experiencing. And people never think about it that you can't separate, as Mrs. Brundtland was saying in the Brundtland report, you cannot separate environment, social dimension, and economy. If it doesn't go hand in hand, we will, again saying, we will be in big trouble. So the problem is that because of the present speed, we see that there are lack in delivering global 2030 agenda. And the COVID-19 will derail this. And one of the areas, what you see here, is after more than 2 decades of progression in global poverty, We've fallen back with more than 120 million people. After many gains related to education, we see that the education level of children fall back. Also think about it, that if the children cannot go to school, those who are in poverty level, they do not get decent meals because the schooling was also providing the meals. So again, poverty, again, education, and again, related to lack of food. But we can look at the greenhouse gas emissions. It didn't reduce as much as we assume, although we closed sectors like mobility related, the air travel, mobility related to car travel because of the close down. Still, the impact wasn't as big as everybody had assumed. The recovery strategy, again, the issue is that we are still very much in silos. It's extremely important. It is very important to deal with these subjects. But if you not take them into account, that they have synergetic effects on each other, you can't have a sustainable industry without addressing also the resource cycle. So circular economy has to be included very much. And last but not at least, I'm starting to say it from the beginning, rethink, recover, readdress issues, but unless you do not reskill people, it's a lost opportunity. When you look at it, you can see what we are aiming at as a global leader, as a European climate pact leader. What are the important points of climate neutrality by 2050, how we are going to be addressing it through all these measures, whether it's the European climate law that came out recently, whether it's a Fit for 55, all the policies, the directives. But nothing will happen if you do not translate it to local level. And here I have to also say that we tend to forget what are the basics of the European Union, subsidiarity. So you have to address these issues at local level, community level, and build it up also from there. So the Fit for 55 package is talking about all the ambitions that we have, but it has to be going hand in hand with measures that are capable of building us up for that. I'm going to give you two good examples. The first one is the European Green Deal, Green Digital Coalition, where big companies form partnership to address development, technologies, methods and tools, and create with representatives of other sectors good examples. I'm always saying to everyone, bring examples. Bring for people is the easiest way to address. So if you see something working at A, B, or C community, it will be a good example for the future. The second one is what Raymond is going to be talking about, is what European Partners for Environment are doing. It is including very much the financials and the financial sectors, the digitalization, and also what you can do socially and environmentally. And these are going to be focusing on the activities, but I'm not taking the words away from Raymond. Last but not at least, I would like to point out ILO. And I'm looking at you because you were talking about phasing out coal, which I think is very important. But when I was making this contribution in Poland, they said, okay, what we do with the 800,000 coal miners? So reskilling, you have to be built into it, and you have to build into it very heavily. When you talk about the new jobs, 25 million new jobs, and 7 million are going to be lost globally, I always remember very dearly of the solar mamas of Africa that are going from village to village. It's a small enterprise, and they are learning how they learned, and they are installing solar panels on huts to enable electricity to be accessible for local communities. So Yes, they are complicated methods, but they're very simple methods. These are all very good examples, and it's very important to take it forward. Last but not least, I'm going to be closing by saying, what are the future skills that are going to be needed? So, digital environment. We were seeing it in the pandemic, what happened. We also have to think about it that some of the jobs that are back office jobs that are driven by or they are occupied by women is going to phase out. So we have to reskill those that we can already see. The second thing is that you have to have cognitive skills that are enable you to be able to get on the top of the trends. Social emotional skills, and I think it came out quite strongly during the pandemic. So our society in community level was very strong on that respect, and adaptability and resilience. If you don't adapt, you don't survive. If you don't build resilience, whether it's at community level, this is a lessons learned from our past. And last but not least, yes, legislation, yes, sustainability solutions, but never forget that the biggest part of the iceberg is below the water, attitude and behavior. So this is why I think we have to work together. And this is why we need initiatives, good examples, activities, and common efforts to make the difference for our common future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marta, for in a very short time running us through the major international and EU policy framework. And on top of that, also at your very valuable recommendations on how to improve that. Thank you so much. I would like to pass the floor now to Irina. She doesn't seem to be with us at the time, so I would like to pass the floor then first to Zefi, if that's okay. No, she's here. Oh, sorry, your camera was just switched off. Okay, Irina, good to have you with us. Please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Can you hear me well, first of all? Yes, okay. So it's an honor to take the floor after Marta. That, yes, I met more than 10 years ago, and especially on the closing of Marta, I think it's very relevant for me, for us as Secretariat of the Energy Community. We work very much on legislation. And I agree that it is only the top of the iceberg. The importance is really implementation and having all the stakeholders around the table. So, Sonia, you asked me to focus on the benefits of an energy transition for our contracting parties, so for the Western Balkans, mainly, and looking into the role of women, which I'm very gladly take on. First of all, I would like just to link up to what Pia and Michael were mentioning at the beginning. So the difference between energy transition and a just energy transition. I think this is something we are trying to raise in terms of awareness with our contracting parties, but also ourselves, with Secretariat. What we see is that our contracting parties, as you all know, when I say contracting parties, I mean the Western Balkan 6 countries, are mainly relying on fossil fuels for electricity on late night. And of course, now the important thing is to transition towards more renewable energy. What sometimes it's given for granted is that within the transition, inequality will just dissolve themselves. And this is definitely not so. We have to tackle inequality as well, and we have to do that systematically. Unless we do that, we just pass from one system, so from the fossil fuel traditional system to the new green system, and we bring on board the same problems and the same inequalities. So that's why we like to discuss about just energy transition, because then inclusion is there, and all the 3 pillars that Pia and Michael mentioned in the morning. All the right stakeholders are the same decision-making table, including, of course, women that do play an important role, youth, vulnerable citizens, and the local communities. Why women are an important, fundamental part of the equation here? Well, first of all, as we know, women These things are changing in the region because, as you know, we have a lot of women now in decision-making positions. For example, in Serbia, we see that in Kosovo as well, and North Macedonia also has a lot of women in power. But still, not always they are at the decision-making table when it comes to the just energy transition. So the important is that they become part of that to shape it, to give their own objectives, their own priorities, their own line of thinking. I don't want to repeat what the previous speaker said, but it's all very much true that climate change, energy transition, they affect unproportionally women because of all the list of problems that Andrea mentioned before, and especially in the energy sector when it comes to energy poverty, because they mainly stay at home. They are caregivers of the kids, of the elderly, or because they live longer, so they're more exposed, and of course they have a lower income in those pensionable time. So energy poverty is also one important element that we want to tackle, and because of this reason, women need to be on board when it comes to making decisions. Another important aspect where women should be there, it's really to stop this gender blind planning when it comes to also renewable energy projects. Sometimes they are just done with an optic of a male perspective. And I see that things are changing in the region and very positively. North Macedonia, I have to reinforce the message, is doing really a lot on this. I had to review myself the National Action Plan on Energy, and I was mesmerized to see that they have the gender equality and social inclusion approach really when it comes to national energy as well as renewable energy projects. So this is really innovative. You see quota for women in the management of the projects, in the maintenance, in the operation. And this is really something new that I haven't seen in many others, even member states of the European Union. And then last but not least, I think the benefit for women to be on board is really to be more aware that they should be part of this revolution, the renewable energy revolution. They have all the skills to be really proactive in the power sector, to be part of the renewable energy sector that at the moment is still underrepresented by women. We only have 32%, but I'm sure that we can easily reach equality there, 50%. When it comes to awareness in our region, I have to say the example I just gave of the JASI approach of the gender equality and social inclusion for Macedonia, it's very positive. But honestly, most of our contracting parties since the last couple of years, they give a lot more importance to gender. I revised all the national determined contributions, and most of NDC2 that have been submitted to the UNFCCC, they do include indicators on gender. They do include specific chapters on gender, the link with climate, and how to mainstream that. This is really positive. As I said, there are a lot of women now more and more on leadership position, and of course they are also pushing for this. What we do as Energy Committee Secretariat is try to mainstream as much as possible gender, but to be honest, we started relatively late. So we have a project that was launched in January 2021, and this project is part of the Just Transition Framework. We also launched a Just Transition Forum in June. We have three main initiatives. One, which is together with the municipalities in Hungary and across the Balkans on the Clean Air Initiative, one on gender equality that I'm leading on, and one on energy poverty. All of them are interlinked and we work together. We have a statement specifically on gender equality with three smart support measures. So one of awareness, one on embedding as much as possible gender in procurement, and one on the gender parity pledge. So we will try in the course of the year to have all events as much as possible equal when it comes to panelists. And to push even more for that, we need even internally to have a training and to make people understand why it is so important to have experts from both sex and bring in different perspectives on the table. I'm working with a lot of experts, but it's not always so easy to pass the message that there are also very good experts on hydrogen that happen to be women as well. for example. We had a first event on April. The Friedrich Ebert Stiftung was part of our event, and the section of energy poverty was very successful. We had more than 130 participants, and we focused very much on the barrier that women, professional women, still very much have to face in the green energy sectors, in renewables as well, and how to overcome this barrier, how to reach and debate the glass ceiling, how to avoid the salary gap, and most importantly, retain staff and have more flexibility. I don't know if I have a bit more time, but maybe I will just briefly, 1 minute, okay, to touch about the Sofia Declaration. There was a second part of my introduction here. Just for those of you that are not aware of the work in the Western Balkans with the European Commission, the Sofia Declaration was signed in November 2020, and it is very much the core of the Green Deal for the Western Balkan countries, and where the Western Balkan leaders agreed on pushing forward in the region towards carbon neutrality by 2050. And as I said, NDC2 in most of our contracting parties, with the exception of Kosovo, that is not a signatory member of the Paris Agreement, they submitted the NDC2 to the UNFCCC, or they are going to be submitted soon, like for example, Serbia and Albania. They are part of the coal region in transition. This is a very important initiative of the European Commission that started with EU member states and Poland specifically, but now has been extended to the Western Balkans and Ukraine, and we as energy community work very much close to the Commission and many other principals to push this in the region with our contracting parties at local level as well. One important element is the national energy and climate plans. So these will be the plans that will have basically the targets of greenhouse gas emission reduction and many other actions up to 2030 with a vision to 2050. And all of our contracting parties are drafting those plans. And this is very positive, even because they still don't have a legal obligation to do so. This will come in November with the governance regulation also applied to the Western Balkan countries and the other contracting parties, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine. And then when it comes to legislation, during the course of this year and last year as well, 2020, 2021, both Montenegro, North Macedonia, Albania, and Serbia adopted climate law. And two of them went even beyond that. We have Montenegro and North Macedonia. They are really champions, and they have a date for coal phase out, which is 2035 and 2027 for North Macedonia. Last point that I wanted to make, and I will just briefly mention, that is carbon pricing. This is going to change substantially all the relations and the system, the energy system. Probably the price of electricity will also be affected. So energy poverty will be something to be tackled. We have a specific project and a publication that will be on our website in the coming months. And we are happy to discuss that with you in a separate moment. Montenegro really is working on that, and they introduce carbon pricing, but this will be most probably happening in the other contracting parties very soon. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Irina, also for highlighting the best practices that we already have in this region from different countries of the region. And I'm sure that we have the opportunity to further discuss that later and also throughout the second part of the conference. For now, I would like to pass the floor to Zefi. Please.
Thank you. Hello, thank you very much for this invitation. I'd like to congratulate all of you, the organizer, for the great work that you have already done, and especially Dasha, my dear Dasha. Thanks for supporting women, for supporting our priorities, and for supporting Balkans also, that it's really, really important for all of our region. We work very close with PS Women and CEE about these very crucial issues that we have to discuss together today. And unfortunately, I'd like to express my experience in Greece this summer, that we have extremely difficult summer with wildland fires. We have more than 1 million acres that have burned. Our forests are burning, and also in Mediterranean, we have to face this unbelievable situation. So we need to do our best for the climate crisis, for the environment, for our people. And I think that today we have the opportunity to highlight, because we have an excellent speakers before me, and I don't want to say again the same things. Marta expresses a very interesting topics about the climate crisis, and all of our speakers, they have focus on specific issues. So I'd like to start from the title of this conference, the Korcula School, that I have already participated once, and it's a great opportunity for us. We talk about recover, restart, retool. And I'd like to say that we have to add reborn. It's time to start from the 0 point again. As women, I think we have the skills, and we will have the opportunity to reborn our world, because this has to be our progressive vision, not to come back to the previous reality. This is totally wrong. We need to have another vision, not easy, but another vision for our world, for our planet, for our people. And I strongly believe that the conservative government cannot work in this field. We are, as progressive, as socialists, we have the knowledge, we have the passion, if we can say that, hand by hand with our family or of our party. I am in PASOK, I'm also deputy spokesperson of PASOK, and Ms. Yenimata wants to work a lot in the issues of greening, but we need to join our forces. We cannot do that without joining our forces all together. I strongly believe that. So we have the tools, as you have already mentioned. We have the European Pillar of Social Rights. We have the SDGs, the 17 SDGs, that this is a roadmap for what we have to do in 3 fields, because I think that we need to work equally for environment, economy, and social, and the society. So we need to have this roadmap in the European Union, and we have worked a lot in this field to go on and change a lot of sectors that join with environment, economy, and society. And of course, we have the European Green Deal, and not only that, we have the European Climate Law, and I like to highlight the European Climate Law. We need to work in Balkans very, 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 very tough in this issue, because Mediterranean, sorry to say, it will be a very sensitive region in the climate crisis. And Balkans, and Western Balkans, and Mediterranean, we need to be protagonists in these issues. We need to push European Union to orient more money and more policies to Mediterranean countries. This is something that I'd like to add to our agenda. This is something that I'd like to highlight, and I think this is a very interesting think tank that we can forward our ideas and join our proposals. And we need something else very important: to be part of these initiatives for greening, not only our leaders, not only our parties, but all people, all citizens. This is really important. Everyone, every woman, man, girl, and boy, to feel that it's part, that is an alive part of this transition. And that means I participate, and that means democracy, and that means justice. So, because I'm a lecturer in Pantheon University and we have a specific lesson about the 17 SDGs, and we have some projects with our students there, I can guarantee that the young generation are more sensitive and are very, very open to join our forces. And I think we need to use, let me say, this young generation and women, because women are more sensitive to this issue, because they born, because they have their child, because they are more, trustful, sorry to say, in few issues, and can work more, participate, and not egoistic, but more for the society than men, because men, they have learned to be leader, screaming, to be the tough one, and all these things. Women are more, easy to work together. I strongly believe that. Well, I'd like to, I don't want to say a few things about the Greek example and what we propose of PASOK and of our Progressive Party. We strongly believe that we need to have criteria. There is a lot of money. Yes, there is a lot of money that we need to have gender criteria in order to pass this money to the people. And we need more women to take money and to have in this recovery plan a very, very specific role. When we talk about gender budgeting, we have to talk about gender criteria in order to share this money. And of course, local criteria, because it's not easy for Balkans, for Germany, for Italy, for Greece, for Spain, for Scandinavian countries. Well, finalizing, we work a lot in the issues of agriculture. We strongly believe that we need to join more women as farmers, because we need to join digitalization in the new agricultural policies. This is a very good example of how women, digitalization, and agriculturists can work together. And we need to work on that, because through the agricultural, we have also the water management issues that coming up, because the water protection and the water saving is really, really crucial. And I'd like finalizing my contribution, saying that we need to have to join the gender mainstreaming with the climate mainstreaming. This is two things that we need to be at the top of our priorities. I'm very happy that I am with you. I will try to join you more than I can, because I have another conference about the fires in Greece, and we have a really difficult situation to face as progressives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sefi, for your strong and powerful words. I'm tempted to say that it's the word about rebirth, like the phoenix from the ashes of the Greek forests. And thank you very much for highlighting that climate policies is nothing that is purely decided in Brussels for the sake of saving the polar bears at the North Pole, but it's carried out by us and for us. And only then this transition can really work. So now I pass the floor to Raymond. It's the last panelist in this row of, I must say, excellent speakers. Raymond, the floor is now yours.
Good morning. I wish, first of all, to thank Dasha for her kind invitation. In view of the challenges of the 21st century, Europe must transform itself. And the European Green Deal is fixing only a part of the agenda. Surprisingly enough, the Green Deal is not addressing governance, while we must very quickly equip ourselves with new instruments of governance and encouragement of transformation for a leap forward of humans towards greater resilience and well-being. It's about moving towards a systemic approach based on digital tools such as blockchain for decentralized management. It's about empowering and holding accountable all actors in value chains and the Green Deal. And we are recommending at EPE to design at national level and or regional and city levels a blockchain strategy to monitor the implementation of commitments, contracts, and funds. As this key governance dimension is not addressed by the Green Deal, we are inviting also to join forces and design a strategy focused on another EU process, which is the Conference on the Future of Europe, which should address this Green Deal gap and lay the foundations for a new social contract with the management of the commons as the main objective, and echoing the struggles against inequalities and for gender equality, with a central place in the fight against inequalities, both globally and within countries. Now, when it comes to the Green Deal, it needs to go together with a double paradigm shift. On one hand, towards the management of the commons, and on the other hand, towards a true democratic digital future. And let me remind you that the famous Aarhus Convention on Access to Information, Public Participation in Decision-Making, and Access to Justice in Environmental Matters was the follow-up of a UN conference on related guidelines, which took place in Sofia in the Balkans after an NGO preparatory meeting in Croatia. And this is why I'm inviting you to encourage your member states and Conference on the Future for Europe representatives to give special attention to this double paradigm shift. Why so? In March 2020, the European Council made resilience to crisis and shocks a major new objective of the EU. We have indeed entered an era of new shocks, which call for a set of societal innovations. And I'm deeply convinced that our civilization will emerge deeply transformed. The COVID-19 crisis has fortunately revealed a capacity for very rapid changes in economic and financial models, as well as in behavior. It has also upset the hierarchies in public opinion in anticipation of the other crises that await us. It has also demonstrated that solidarity is the condition for resilience. But this solidarity must be organized around common goods, be systemic, and be part of a value chain of multi-stakeholder partnerships that is not limited to borders and mandates. In the field of monitoring of commitments of each and everyone, the blockchain opens the way to new methods of contracts and management of common goods, and the funds allocated to their valuation and conservation, building the basis of a digital democracy. This will be one of the objectives of an alliance between new technology and the new needed societal innovations. That's why, for example, the Conference of the Future should set the framework for a participatory democracy in the age of digital and common goods. We are exploring how to convince the European Commission and the member states to innovate by launching 3 European laboratories: blockchain, transparency, trust, innovation. The first field would be the climate strategy and its European Pact for Climate. The second would be the biodiversity strategy, and the third, the so-called farm to fork strategy. In conclusion, we don't just need green goals. we need a change in business practices and developments based on a new vision of how we can empower ourselves. In this framework, the management of common goods, which are, as the Nobel Prize winner Ostrom defines them, common reservoirs of resources, should have a central place alongside the means to fight against inequalities and for gender equality. This management should be ecosystemic and be based on a common technological base, including a blockchain strategy for transparency, accountability, and trust. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Raymond, for this very innovative ideas, especially for mentioning also the conference on the future of Europe, which is a very important tool, and also for highlighting that, yes, there is a new set of shocks for our democracy. And I can only say that I was really shocked to see the answer of Germany to the COVID crisis of the German government, which was not really constitutional, undemocratic in some parts. And I can only imagine what will happen if we have a crisis that does not last 2 years, but 200 years, and what will be left of our democracies then. Thanks very much, Raymond, for also pointing out that there are ways out of that if we use digital technology also wisely. And now, I know that there was a question in the back from the previous round, and I guess there are many, many more questions also until we break for lunch. So please, if you can also introduce yourself.
Thank you, Anita Shabanovic, member of C-Gender Network. Thank you for this fruitful discussion, and definitely this is the subject and this is the really important topic that we will definitely need to have in all our seminars, in all our conferences, and discuss about this and try to have Western Balkan countries included in everything. For example, when we discuss conference on future of Europe, Western Balkan countries are not included, but we are part of Europe, and the topic is future of Europe, not the future of European Union. And this was something that the leaders from Western Balkans using this regional cooperation should use, but it seems that they are not using it because it seems that in our region, the status quo is something that should be maintained, and that something is that it seems that the status quo is something that is important for our leaders, and actually the most important issue to have everything as it is and not to move forward. My question was for Natasha, and I will do it in local language. Natasha, hvala za izlaganje i ono što nekako ste napomenuli sve ono što već dugo, o čemu već dugo pričamo, i čini se da predstavnici organizacija civilnog društva u regionu mnogo o tome pričaju također, i kada je u pitanju ova konferencija, nekako predstavnici organizacija civilnog društva su se najviše trudili da uključe zemlje Zapadnog Balkana u samu konferenciju za razliku od naših lidera. Evo, ja sam nekako u ovom uvodnom predstavljanju spomenula, a i vi ste dosta kroz svoje izlaganje, upravo tu regionalnu saradnju koja je počela na Berlinskom procesu. Svake godine imamo novi summit, svake godine naši lideri potpisuju nove papire. U ovom slučaju na zadnjem summitu u Sofiji su potpisali i obavezali se za stvari koje se tiču i Green Deala i svega onog ostalog što uključuje Green Deal. Nekako, evo, i Sonja je spomenula ranije, pričamo o Green Dealu, a imamo toliko bitnih stvari o koji se još nismo dogovorili, koje još nismo sredili, uredili da bi građani i građanke zemalja Zapadnog Balkana vidjele bolji život i prosperitet, a ne napuštale ovu zemlju, posebno mladi na kojima bi trebalo da te promjene ostanu. Koliko mislite da je ta regionalna saradnja i ono zbog čega je nastala kroz berlinski proces zaista iskrena, i koliko mislite da lideri Zapadnog Balkana zaista koriste tu ideju paketa Zapadnog Balkana da bi neke stvari promijenili i da bi na kraju nametnuli Zapadni Balkan Evropskoj uniji i na kraju to koristili kao svoju snagu da zaista dobijemo i neko ozbiljno shvatanje od strane lidera Evropske unije kada je u pitanju Zapadni Balkan, ili je još uvijek sve na tom nekom ličnom interesu lidera i pokazivanju snaga između njih i onda ćemo se malo sastati na samitu, potpisati određene dokumente, a još uvijek ne znamo na osnovu čega i koji strategija ćemo neke stvari uraditi i na kraju približiti se više građanima i građankama. S druge strane, zašto mislite da građani, barem po anketama ili čak i neki lideri iznose sada imaju manje podrške prema Evropskoj uniji? Da li je to ova situacija koja se dešava i sa utjecajima trećih zemalja i zašto na kraju mi kao zemlje, opet naši lideri, ne koristimo to kao jedan od koraka i u razgovorima sa Evropskom unijom da konferencija o budućnosti Europe, ako uzmemo u obzir da smo mi Europa i da u komšiluku sve više i više dolaze Kinezi, Rusi, Turci i slično i da će oni biti u komšiluku zemljama Evropske unije, da li bi to moglo promijeniti nešto kada je u pitanju i sam odnos Evropske unije prema zemljama Zapadnog Balkana? Hvala.
Okay, thanks. If there are a few more questions, I would like to have one or two more, and there we already have two more. Okay. Do you have a mic or you just take my mic?
My question is primarily about for Marta, but anybody else can reply. So I wanted to set up the dilemma about the processes of digitalization versus the processes of just transition. So the COVID pandemic has brought a lot of novelties, especially in the democratic world, but was also characterized with quantitative and qualitative jumps in digitalization in all areas of life: economic, industrial, societal, etc. However, the aftermath of all of these processes has shown that not all benefited equally from these processes of digitalization. The richest keep getting richer, the poorer keep getting poorer, and the marginalized keep getting more marginalized. Workers and women are among the most affected of these categories. So how do we ensure that the upcoming progress that all of us here strive towards will target and benefit all and not just the elites? What are the safeguards that we can put in place?
Very crucial question. Before you pass on the microphone to the next speaker, could you also, we are curious to learn who you are.
My name is Pavle Bogojevski. I'm the Executive Director of the Progress Institute for Social Democracy from Skopje.
Thanks. Please.
Thank you so much. My name is Snežana Kales-Kavančeva. I'm president of Women's Forum, my party, Social Democratic Party of Republic of Macedonia, now North Macedonia, and I'm a member of the parliament. I would like to comment some, I was inspired from Zefi, and hi Zefi, thank you very much for your inclusion in this session. And it was when she said that Mediterranean and the Western Balkan need to push Europe in fight against climate changes. And I agree the importance of this question for climate changes for all countries, but especially if we are talking about this region for Mediterranean and Western Balkan. But I have one dilemma. How can we, the countries of Western Balkan, push Europe to fight harder against climate changes, to fight against inequality, when we're still waiting in front of the door of European Union? This is my question, because we are so tired to waiting to be part of European Union. On the other hand, we need to be together. We are geographically, historically part of Europe. This Balkan is not an other continent. This Balkan is here in the heart of Europe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we had 3 questions addressed to Natasha, Marta, and Zefi, and I would like to ask you to reply to that first. If possible, give short answers, so maybe we have a second round of questions.
Thank you for the question. Kad se radi o regionalnoj saradnji i da li je ona iskrena, ja mislim da je ona neophodna. Greška je svih naših lidera i naših političkih partija, vlada, ukoliko regionalne saradnje prilaze kao nečemu što od nas traži Evropska unija. Ali to ne važi samo za regionalnu saradnju, to važi isto tako i za druge reforme. Ukoliko mi pristupamo reformskom procesu kao nečemu što od nas traži Evropska unija i onda pokušavamo da tu igramo neke igre, koliko ćemo to uraditi, a koliko nećemo, to je neiskreno. To je potrebno zbog naših društva, zbog naših građana. I uvek na taj način treba, čini mi se, okrenuti taj narativ i na tome insistirati. Međutim, ova kriza COVID je pokazala da ta solidarnost nije važna samo između Evropske unije i Zapadnog Balkana, nego da je ona šansa i za promociju solidarnosti i saradnje između zemalja Zapadnog Balkana i naših društava. Mislim da je pitanje vakcina to pokazalo, jel? I mislim da je tu napravljena da se malo doprinelo izgradnji jednog novog poverenja, čini mi se. Naravno, znajući nas, znam koliko može da bude brzo pokvareno. Da li je, dakle, iskrena saradnja? Mislim da više da sa ovim procesom usporavanja evropskih integracija, s druge strane, proces regionalne saradnje na neki način postaje možda iskreniji, zbog toga što uviđamo neophodnost da sarađujemo dok čekamo odgovor Evropske unije, odnosno ubrzanje tog procesa, jer da se razumemo, usporavanje je rezultat usporavanja reformi kod nas, ali i usporavanja politike proširenja na strani Evropske unije. A što se tiče podrške za EU, ja mislim da je naravno svakome i svakoj našoj vladi lakše da vlada bez pravila koja nameće Evropska unija. Pomenula sam tender procedure, naravno da je mnogo pogodnije, mnogo bolje, mnogo jednostavnije i mnogo probitačnije za pojedince, naročito, da imaju tenderske, odnosno da imaju direktne pogodbe, dogovore sa investitorima, nego što imaju tender procedure, na primjer. To su jedna vrsta pravila. Međutim, opet je to pitanje koliko i civilno društvo, i političke stranke, i politički, dakle, prosto zajednica, jeste u stanju da se tome suprotstavi. Da kaže, ne, mi želimo Evropsku uniju, želimo da poštujemo te procedure, želimo da imamo čiste investicije, to je climate friendly investicija i mi na tome insistiramo. Sad, s druge strane, imate i situaciju da nemate takvih investicija i da vi morate negde, kako bih rekla, rešiti pitanje nezaposlenosti, to je pitanje, recimo, ne znam, Smederevske, steel industry, i tako dalje, imate borske rudnike, sve su to pitanja koja negde jesu i ekonomska i razvojna i environment takođe. Eto. Treba nam više sredstava takođe da bismo mogli tu politiku da sprovedemo.
Thanks a lot. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to say a statement at the beginning that we are all Europeans in this room. We were, we are, and we will be. So the question is, and that's a big recommendation from my part, is that we shouldn't build up fortresses because of the pandemics, fortresses. So exclusion is a very dangerous game because it builds frustration and it builds a very different kind of society or community for the future. And I don't think that we are aiming at, or anybody at the decision-making level is aiming at. So I fully share what you were saying. The second thing is related to inequality in access of digital tools and processes. I think it was also a very hard exercise that we came across. And we weren't aware of that how unequal our society is. And I think it's time to build up structures, funds, equipment, infrastructure to be able to address it before the next one comes. Because to be sure, there will be next one that is going to be coming, and we have to be taken care of, whether it's through the education system, whether it's through the healthcare system. Because for me, one of the biggest shocks was how vulnerable our healthcare system is, and how unequal is accessibility, whether you are in the city, whether in a village, and also related to vaccine. They brought it up as a positive example that we have been working together to have access to vaccines. But still, look at Africa. There are countries with 0% vaccination. And we say, oh yes, it's terrible. They have 0% vaccination. What do you do about it? And the same thing about your local community. I'm sorry to say, in Croatia, I was very surprised to see how low is your vaccination level. I don't understand. If it's available, it is accessible, why? And it again comes down to communication, comes down to accessibility, to understanding. And I think that these are things that we had to do yesterday. And not today is late, but if we are waiting, it's going to be too late. So that's my message.
Thank you. It's not too late to answer the next question.
Just for 1 minute. Yeah, I know that we have the time limits. Well, I really agree with my dear speaker that asked me about the European Union, and you know, as Greek, because I'm a Greek, we have the bad experience of financial crisis, you know, and I can understand very, very much that we are tired, that we need and we want more solidarity, and I think that we cannot stay out of European Union. This is my personal view and this is my priority. I'd like to join our forces, first of all, through our socialist parties. We need to move more passionate in our parties and demand more from European Union to work with West Balkans, because the environmental issues is not just for our region. We have problems in climate crisis, and this problem will have problem in Germany also with the floods and what you say. So, no, it's not that take it in your country and I don't care. It's not like, you know, migrants and refugees, sorry to say, and I close this paragraph, that stay there with your refugees and okay. And we need to be more solidar with all these people, and now with these geopolitical issues with Afghan, but this is another issue. I don't want to focus on that. And the other issue is that we have, my sisters, to overcome in Western Balkans and generally in Balkans, to overcome our little differences and go together to ask from European Union to do some things. We need to work on our networks, on women networks. I strongly believe that women is better in negotiation, and try to leave out the small difficulties. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dasha kindly granted a few more minutes. So if there are any urgent questions you want to ask to the panelists before we break for lunch, then the time is now. Dasha.
Jako je bila bogata ova diskusija I ja mislim da stvarno smo i u celo prepodne pokretali pitanja koja zahtevaju da se dalje raščlane. Ja bih htjela da samo kažem par stvari. Prvo, jedna analiza koju ja stalno spominjem jer me je stvarno iznenadila, mladih ljudi, mladih srednjoškolaca u Srbiji je pokazala da su mlade devojke mnogo spremnije na inovacije i mnogo aktivnije u smislu društvenih zalaganja i znači otvorene za nove ideje. To je bilo jako zanimljivo dok su mladići više bili na konzervativnoj strani. Marta je pokrenula pitanje vakcinacije. To je, Marta, ja mislim, suštinsko pitanje u kome desna konzervativna struja seje i nepoverenje prema, ako hoćeš, nauci i zdravstvu, odnosno seje i tu jednu konfuziju koja danas postoji ovde, koja je mnogo veća od vakcine. Mi imamo danas i ta isto pitanja srednjoškolaca u Srbiji pokazuju da je intelektualna i mozgovna paraliza ili pa konfuzija u glavima mladih ljudi, jer žive u sistemu koji ih bombarduje raznoraznim misinformacijama i lažima. I to je, ja mislim, za pitanje ovoga što je Raymond govorio, ja moram reći da mi je jako drago da je naša ekipa iz Evropskog partnerstva za environment ovde, Raymond kao izvršni direktor i Marta kao potpredsjednica i ja kao predsjednica, pokušavamo da ovu agendu upravo guramo u tom integralnom pristupu ovim novim rešenjima koje su tu, ali i kritičkim. Jer ono što je Raymond govorio je pitanje governance. To je pitanje transparentnosti. Zemlje će dobiti pare sada od Evropske unije, kako će ih trošiti? Će ih trošiti transparentno, hoće ih trošiti strateški, hoće moći stanovništvo da učestvuje ili će se projekti praviti tako da ponovo pune džepove određenih elita. I to je sada krucijalno pitanje koje mi kao progresivne snage moramo gurati. Tu transparentnost da te pare, da ta mogućnost koja stoji pred nama, da to nećemo propustiti. I Sonja, mi smo sada case in point. Jer ćemo ići na ručak, a ručak upravo priprema osoba koja ima eko uzgajalište i radi i zaštitu okoline u svojoj Korčuli. I koja je s tim ženskim entrepreneurshipom i poduzetništvom napravila ovo sa svojom kćeri. To je divan, ona je dobila i nagrade za to i tako dalje. Ono što je, ja mislim, više govornika su rekli o lokalnom. A Zefi, nemojmo zaboraviti da je ono kad si govorila o Balkanu vezano najneposrednije za Mediteran, za Sredozemlje. Jer to jeste bazen. I taj bazen sada gori. I onda se mi čudimo, jel? I znam da je Hrvatska pomogla u gašenju požara. Prema tome, to jeste naše zajedničko pitanje. I na kraju, Sonja, allow me da ispravim jednu grešku, a to je da pozdravim našu drugaricu Besimu Borić koja je s nama od početka i koja se jako zalagala za sve ono što radimo i za podršku. Hvala puno.
Okay, thank you so much, Dasha, also for inviting all the great speakers. I really now start to understand why this conference is taking place every year, because there is such a flurry of ideas and questions that it's really impossible to address it in one conference alone, let alone in one session. Now, we heard about this delicious lunch, but before we all move out, I would also ask you to give a hand to the perfect interpreters who are doing a great job. I can hear. And of course, to the speakers, thank you very much for being here online or offline. And yeah, see you again after lunch. Have a nice lunch break.
Stigo smo do kraja ove škole, zahvaljujemo vam na sudjelovanju. Očekujemo vaše komentare, sugestije i mišljenja. Do našeg sljedećeg susreta neka nas prati misao Dolores Huarte. Svaki trenutak prilika je za organiziranje, svaka osoba potencijalni aktivist, svaka minuta prilika za promjenu svijeta. Hvala vam. We have reached the end of this school. Thank you for your participation. We look forward to your comments, suggestions, and opinions. Until our next gathering, let the thought of Dolores Huarte follow us. Every moment is an organizing opportunity, every person a potential activist, every minute a chance to change the world. Thank you.